Okay, a very warm welcome to all participants joining from different geographies for our Data Center Security Summit 2022. I want to wish good morning for all the folks joining from India or from Middle East, Africa region, and good afternoon to folks joining from Singapore, Philippines, Australia, or this part of the world of Southeast Asia. This is a very important message that we want to highlight, that the summit is focused towards engaging all the participants with knowledge which could improve their skill sets towards having data center security in their own firms or towards their clients that they are helping out to. We have been hearing this term, data is the new oil, I think for ages now. I also heard data is the new gold. I think it's time to change that paradigm a bit. I would say data is the new antimatter. Antimatter is the most expensive material ever known to the earth. We have seen and used data like anything during COVID scenarios. I myself remember that during COVID days, everything turned online, right from buying groceries, watching movies, having education for our kids, and doing everything else, socializing with friends as well. With so much data available now and exponential growth, it is imperative that data centers will become the new age oil, gold, antimatter, where a lot of focus will be there. APAC as a region has seen unprecedented growth in data centers as well. In fact, as per one of the surveys, we are beating EMEA as of 21-22 with the number of data centers in this region. We are seeing growth in areas such as Seoul, Tokyo, Sydney, also regions such as Jakarta, Bangkok, and India as a whole. We are seeing a splurge in terms of data centers that are coming up. With so much data that is growing, data centers will become the new target area as well. Why? Because anything that is of value will be a target for counter-terrorist organizations. With that, I would like to again highlight that this is a very a session which will enhance your knowledge with the participant list as well as the panel list that we have some distinguished and esteemed panelists that have joined from different organizations. And we would like to now, I think it's about 2 minutes now, and we can start the session with Lieutenant General Sharma. Okay. Before I begin, just one note: we are also organizing a specific training session on 25th of September on data center security. We are having a data center security masterclass. This is for any of the folks who are interested in that. And 25th is our regular command center masterclass we are also organizing. Okay, let me introduce to our chairman, Lieutenant General Sudhir Sharma. Okay, we fondly know him as a distinguished leader who has always guided us in all our operations. He's an acknowledged thought leader and expert on defense, homeland, and corporate security. He advises organizations, corporations, and government bodies of corporate security matters. Lieutenant General Sharma has been decorated for gallantry as well as distinguished service and felicitated on 2 occasions by the President of India for leadership and devotion to duty and country. He is a well-recognized leadership coach and has mentored startups and helped realize their potential, such as MitKat. Over to you, sir. We wish to hear your comments and views with regards to data center security.
Thank you, Mitesh. First of all, I too would like to extend a welcome to all participants, speakers today at a very important security summit. We're having it for the second time because we realize its importance. We all agree that we are living in times of momentous change, transformation, innovation, and disruption. This was not always so. If you remember, the first industrial revolution took place somewhere in the term 1765. When the steam engine was invented and steam was used first time to power machines. And the second one, we had to wait another 100 years to 1870, when electricity was invented and electricity started being used. And we came across the assembly lines. Electricity became used in manufacturing in mass scale. And that was the second industrial revolution. And the third, again, took another 100 years nearly, in 1965, when the computing power of computers and started using in machines, and computers came into play in the third industrial revolution, which started off. We didn't have to wait another 100 years for the next one, because in the next 30 years or so, we had the fourth industrial revolution. In fact, It was as late as 2014 when it was called the fourth industrial revolution. And it's also called the digital revolution. And that is the thing which has transformed the world, because the speed at which it has taken off exponentially has been much faster than the first three revolutions. So that shows you how fast we are growing. And today, data, as he calls the antimatter, has taken over center stage and become the core thing on which we run. If you're looking at the world growing and we're looking at trillions of dollars economy, with India's hoping to become a $5 trillion economy in the next 3 to 4 years, and possibly hitting $20 to $30 trillion by 2030, 2050, on the back of 5G, AI, quantum computing, and the whole world's GDP is also going to jump to about $150 trillion. This is all going to be pushed only on the back of technology and digital data. And the mass of data which has been created is so enormous, because there are two things which are happening. Firstly, the quantum of data is increasing. On the other hand, the need for data to be real time is increasing. We want data to be immediate. High data immediately required, and that has become the major function of how data is going to run the world, whether it's technology, whether it's space, whether it's EV, everywhere digital and data is going to run it. And through data runs through the heart, which is the data center. And this term came into being only as late as 1990. You'll be surprised to know that. Otherwise, always called the computer. Your supercomputer is like a data center in the past. But actual data center with racks, etc., came to being and being such called as 1990 only. I equate it to like the heart of the body, which pumps blood into an entire system, and a data center pumps information, data, everything into the whole world. It runs on the basis of it. If the heart malfunctions or goes faulty, you know what happens. Similarly, the data center malfunctions, you know what's going to happen. Now, I think data center security has got 4 basic pillars. We all know of it. I don't want to preach to the choir, but first is the physical security. Now, physical security has got 2 aspects to it. One is the access control by people who have got authorized entry into it, and how one can breach the physical security barrier by pretending to be somebody and getting into it, and that is the access control system. In October 2021, Facebook went down for about 4 hours. They've not given the exact reason, but they've said a physical security incident has happened in the center somewhere for which it went down. Second, in the physical security, I also talk about the internal factors. People from inside, either by design or by negligence or by some reason, the people who are actually authorized to work inside leak information. I give a recent example. Google, a gentleman by the name of Anthony, stole 14,000 files of the self-driving cars of Google and took it with him when he transferred to Uber. He had resigned a month before, and he took all these files and went over and handed over to Uber. Of course, he was caught, and the case is going on. He's facing a sentence of about 3 years, and Uber has paid $300 million to Google to settle the claim out of court. Ironically, Uber itself lost its data to another hacker. We took $55 million, 55 million people's identity and driver thing, and they had to pay $100,000 to the hacker to destroy the data. So internally also there can be a lot of threat, because it says 30% of threats to data centers come from internal negligence or by design, people doing criminal activities to take data from them. A third, we come to cyber. And I don't want to talk about cyber because we were talking about it. There are innumerable incidents of cyber breaches. Where you take it Yahoo, Alibaba, take it the Starwood properties, any number of breaches are taking place every year. 4 to 5 major breaches take place because of cyber negligence. Somebody hacks into your system, and generally it is happening to connected devices. And that is something which you want to be careful about. I recently learned of an incident target lost a lot of data because the air conditioning contractor interface is where the hackers got into it. They were using a very well-known contractor for the HVAC heating system, and it was compromised. Similarly, lots of camera companies get compromised when people enter the data center through that. And that's cybersecurity. Today, we'll be learning a lot about it, but that's the third pillar of data center security. The fourth is I call it the environmental concerns, where the data center is located. It could be the climate changes, it could be floods, it could be earthquakes, it could be fire, it could be tornadoes, it could be any reason by which physically a data center gets disturbed. To give an example, in Leeds in 2016, the Vodafone data center was flooded. and the complete data center shut down and they lost a lot of data and Vodafone went down for a long time. Recently in France, last year itself, there was a fire in one of the French data centers, and also a fire in the Google Fire Center just in August itself, where they lost a lot of data. So fire, flooding, earthquake, physical damage, or anything can happen to a data center to do that. So these 4 areas are of concern to security professionals, how to do it. The problem is that all these threats are accelerating exponentially. By the time you prepare for the threat today, tomorrow's threats are even more potent, more difficult, and based on AI computing, they're going to change it dramatically. So all the data center security experts have not only to keep abreast, but have to constantly evolve themselves to be able to meet threats. Else, they'll be found wanting, because when the next time comes, it will not be there. Today, we got hyperscale data centers, we got edge data centers. So new things are coming up, which will have to work and do so. I'm sure that you people will discuss this today. I just want to tell you that data centers are going to drive the world for a long time to come. And unless data centers are well understood, well protected, the countries which don't do so, we're going to lose a lot of money. One more last point I want to add is politically, a lot of thought is going to be put into data centers. India has come up with a policy that no financial data can be hosted outside India. That's a very stringent policy. RBI, stopped American Express for work in India because the data centers are located outside of India. Now, the rule is in the Data Protection Act that you can only host entire sensitive data within the country's geographical boundaries. You must keep a copy in India, but you could take a copy outside to process it. So a lot of political pressure is going to build up on data centers to how they secure themselves, how they prepare themselves. We as security experts will have to understand the rules and procedures existing in various countries for data centers have to be protected. So all in all, a very challenging, very exciting area to be in, how to protect data centers, how to go forward. I wish you all a very, very enjoyable, productive, and intellectually stimulating discussion as all the experts discuss how to make data centers more secure, how to deal with threats, and how to make sure they are cost effective and productive. Thank you. Have a great day. Look forward to listening to all of you.
Thank you. Thank you, General Sharma. It was a very fruitful opening remarks from your side. Yes, we are well aware that cyber security and physical security go hand in hand for data center. And is in fact, geopolitical scenarios are going to drive data security strategies as well. Nobody wants to have their data now hosted in Eastern Europe, for instance. Okay, on that note, let's move to the next, to the keynote speaker. Allow me to introduce Akhilesh Tuteja, partner and head technology, media and telecom sector and alliances for KPMG. Welcome, Akhilesh, for this forum. Allow me to introduce you. Akhilesh Tuteja heads the telecom, media and technology industry for KPMG in India and is also serving as the global leader for cybersecurity consulting practice for KPMG. Akhilesh also serves on the Executive Council of NASSCOM. He has led multiple engagements involving large-scale digital transformation programs and delivered outcomes through use of data analytics, cloud, and artificial intelligence. He has also been associated with a number of national and international industry forums. Akhilesh frequently contributes articles on business and technology, as well as on other segments. He has received Consulting Magazine's Global Consultant of the Year Award in 2019. On that note, we would love to welcome you, Akhilesh, for this forum and would love to hear your thoughts on data center security, since you have been closely associated with a number of larger organizations who have their data on cloud or for private or public on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mitesh, for that wonderful introduction. I wish I had told my secretary that I've got only 8 minutes and my long introduction has already taken 45 seconds out of that. So I hope I'm left with now just about 7 minutes and 15 seconds.
No, you have time. You have time.
No, I would be mindful of everybody else coming next. But thank you, Mitesh. That was a wonderful introduction. And what
Akhilesh, we have 5 minutes extra cushion, so please take your time.
Yeah, I get the bonus. Sometimes I get all these goodies in the beginning because when it comes to the end of my session, I would never get it. So thank you so much, Sam, for offering it in the front. I'll take it because later you won't give it to me. So thank you so much. And what an inspiring opening remark. Thank you so much for sharing it with us. First, I would like to start with saying I disagree with that data is new oil. So Mitesh, you also said that that was the past, but Let me come to that in a couple of minutes, saying why I don't think that the data is the new oil. And I also don't agree that why data is not the new antimatter. We'll talk about that in a couple of minutes. But before I go there, let me tell you a story, because I'm actually known for not knowing stuff, but knowing these stories. So this is the story of a person who lives in a small town. And every morning this person wakes up and dresses up very nicely, puts up the tie and puts up a nice jacket like me, because again, my wife tells me saying that till you get a personality, at least dress up properly. And this guy dresses up properly, goes to the town square and takes out his red hat. And by the way, red hat is only not what IBM owns, so it's a red hat of this person, and waves it vigorously for about 10 minutes. And he does it every day. And there's a new traffic inspector there who's posted in this town, and he hasn't seen this man before. And on day 5, this guy says, hang on, what are you doing? Why do you come every day and thus for the next 10, 15 minutes, you wave your red hat so vigorously? And this guy says, can't you see that I'm forcing the giraffes to go away? And this traffic inspector says, what? There are no giraffes. He says, exactly, because I'm doing my job so well that there are no giraffes. So there are many of us sometimes who fall into this trap of doing something and believe that the result of what we are doing is all the good things that are happening in life. And because I wave my red hat and there are no giraffes on the road, and that is the kind of phenomena sometimes many people who are working on the data center security world can fall into, saying, because I wake up every day, because I attend to my data center, because I'm the security expert, because I do all of these things, and guess what? We've had no incident for the last 365 days. I can tell you that sometimes was just me waving that red hat, because most of the time there are no giraffes. And most of the time there are no cyber attacks. But when that giraffe comes, the red hat will not be able to push it away. And when that incident happens, what we do every day may not be able to help us. And therefore, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about my learnings of why we turn away from our red hat and feeling the thing that just because an attack hasn't happened is attributable to all the great security capabilities I bring, could be one of the biggest fallacies we might be dealing with. Before I go into the security part of it, let me talk about the data center as an interesting thing. Mitesh talked about the data is the new oil. And let me tell you why I don't agree that data is new oil. Because I think all of us need lots and lots of data, right? And for the last 5 years, my doctor has been telling me, saying that, Akhilesh, if there's one thing which is bad for you, it's oil. So too much of oil is bad for me, certainly for many of you who are in my age. And a lot of people used to say that the data is new water. And I say that, even if you have too much of water, that will also drown you. And if a lot of people used to say that data is new oxygen, and if you thought oxygen is good, there's also the concept of oxygen toxicity. And if you have too much of oxygen toxicity, it could kill you. And let me now talk about Mitesh, who said that the antimatter. I don't know how many of you know what's called the little boy. Little boy happened many years ago. This was the little boy which was dropped by United States to a city called Hiroshima. And little boy had the ability to produce 43 kilotons of TNT equivalent energy. And let me tell you, how much of antimatter do you need to produce exactly the same amount of energy which was produced by the bomb in Hiroshima? It's, Mitesh, 1 gram of antimatter. So I do hope that we don't create antimatters of that size and significant magnitude. But with that, let me come to you saying why data centers are important, even though the data might be whatever it is. I think data might be many things for many people and it's not be one thing for everything. In my view, data centers are going to become more and more important as we go along for several reasons. The first one is that the future of war will not happen based on the tools and weapons which you're seeing. I think it's going to happen on data colonization. Imagine a country which is an enemy country of ours had access to all the data of our country. If they knew that which are the top 20 scientists in a particular country, and if they knew what is the exact pattern of what those scientists do, who's my dentist, who's my favorite doctor, who's my physician, imagine that kind of a power. So I'm not talking about somebody stealing my data and actually take my Google recommendation or my Netflix recommendation. Those are tiny things. I think the real big power which today's data centers actually capture is the entire country's data wealth. So in my view, the data centers are not necessarily only dealing with the tiny issues, but are dealing with many big issues. Another thing which I want to tell you based on my experience, that the data centers in the future will employ only 2 people. Okay, the data centers have only two employees, one a person and another a dog. And a person will be required to feed the dog, and the dog is required to make sure that the person doesn't touch any computers there. Because the data centers of the future will be autonomous, they absolutely don't require any intervention, and they will run 99.59 capabilities. And if that is the kind of data center which you're going to live, what it's going to create, they're going to create what's known as the G.I. Joe fallacy. And the G.I. Joe fallacies, and I think some of the Americans have grown up with that, which basically says that knowing is half the battle won. And I think that's one of the bad fallacies you could live in. If knowing was winning the battle, I could tell you I would be 6 kilos lighter. Because I can tell you, I know exactly everything, that what time should I wake up, how much should I exercise every day, what should I not be eating, what should my lifestyle be. In fact, so much so that I can write a book on how to become slimmer. But I'm not. So the fact that you know, and that's the fallacy which many data centers live, that every data center I consult with, they have a very thick manual. They have a playbook, they have this and they have that, they have everything sorted out, saying on how to deal with in this event of an incident, how to secure a data center. But I can tell you, if you are living in the world where the data center does not require you to pay attention because they are autonomous, because they are fully self-functional, chances are that the person and the people who are manning those data centers would have lost the ability to deal with those kind of things. And therefore, just the fact that they are autonomous data center, in my view, require far more importance on us training our people who are actually attending to those data centers. So the fact that we are more automated is a more obligation on our part to build more human capability to deal with that. Another thing which I want to talk about is the challenge which we all together as a humanity are dealing with the data, is that as the data centers continue to grow, which are going to grow, and the data becomes more and more easy to store, and the cost of storage goes down exponentially as it's been going, it is going to fit into what I typically call as the Laffer's curve. And let me explain what Laffer's curve is. Laffer curve says that something which may look good, too much of that may actually become bad. And let me give you the example. So Laffer curve was built for designing what should be the ideal tax rate for a country. So imagine if you're a country and if your tax rate is 10%, and the government makes up next day saying, let's make tax rate 12% so that we can increase the government spending. I'm sure they'll be able to do that. So they move from 10 to 12%, the tax revenues will increase. When they move from 12 to 15 to 18 and 20, the tax revenue will increase. But a point will come, if I increase the tax revenues beyond 50%, people will say it's not worth working. So why should I earn so much money, of which 50% government will take away? At that point in time, increasing the tax rate will actually become counterproductive, and it will reduce the government exchequer. I think we are following the same trap with the data. So storing data is becoming less and less expensive, and therefore much and much easier. But if the technology around that, to keep it fresh, to keep it retrievable, and to keep it available and relevant for us, does not increase at that same pace, I think the value of that data will diminish over time. So one of the things which I say is that these two technologies, which are the data center technologies and the data management technologies, they have to work hand in hand. And as that, the second part of the technology improves, the security threats around that will continue to increase around that. Another thing which I want to leave it with you is that I have been a big proponent of planet sustainability. And I'm sure all of you also heard about say no to single-use plastic. And I believe that our data centers also have the ability to actually increase the sustainability of our planet by saying, say no to single-use data. Today, I see the organization store so many cuts, so many dimensions of the data where the same data has been stored in several copies. So by reducing the data duplication and by reducing the ability for us to have to do that kind of thing, we might actually be able to make our data centers more efficient, environment friendly. But my selfish reason is that they will become more secure, because the more you have to secure, the harder it is. But imagine if you had to secure less. So for the benefit of data center security, we not only have to work on pure security technologies, we also have to work on data management, manipulation, and storage technology. And the last point I want to share with you before I leave is data centers are like the back rooms. And I'll share this personal anecdote with you. I have an apartment, and I wanted to find a tenant for that apartment, and that apartment wasn't used for a long time. So this Sunday I went and visited, and I called somebody who could fix an apartment. And when he came up with an estimate, he gave me a number and I said, that does it cover everything? He says, it covers everything, but I'm actually not doing much work. The servant quarter, in the balcony behind the kitchen and those areas. And I said, why are you not doing it? He says, who will look at that? And imagine all our data centers are those which nobody looks at. We are all investing all our time, money, and energy in something which we look at, which looks shiny, all our front end, all our user experience, they get all the attention. But sometimes I feel our data centers don't get that kind of attention, especially from the CEO. If you go and ask the CEO of every company, they will know everything about the UI, the front end, the customer facing application, but they actually may not know enough about data centers. So as much as it's important for us to sensitize the people who manage data center about data center security, it is equally important for us to take this message to the senior leaders, because in the world of tomorrow, what you do in the data center will drive the trust of your business in the future. So with that, I'm so happy that the organizers here have invited me, but more importantly, you're talking about a topic which is so close to my heart. And this is particular thing, securing the data center will actually play the most pivotal role in us becoming a more trusting digital society, and that will increase, in my view, the world peace. Thank you.
Thank you, Akhilesh, for wonderful views. I'll take that point more. I'll not use the term again. Data is the new oil, water, or antimatter. I'll reach out to you. I'll reach out to you. What is the new word I should use? Right?
No, you must give it. I just wanted to kind of.
No, I understand. I was taking an analogy of how important it is. Okay. On that note, we have close to 300 people who are attending it, live now with us on our platform Zoom. But it is also streaming on LinkedIn and YouTube. I humbly request all the participants here to like, share, so that it could reach out to more people who are not currently viewing this stream. It will help them also to enhance this knowledge. So please like, share, or whatever you could do to enhance this outreach. Okay. With that, let's move to our first panel discussion, which is going to be moderated by Mr. Colonel Sushil Pradhan. Allow me to introduce you. Colonel Sushil is a seasoned professional with over 32 years of experience in leadership and management roles, and supervising complex and diverse teams, managing challenging programs in India and abroad. Sir is a prolific speaker in several influential and high-profile industry forums, not only in India, but in Dubai, London, Singapore, Colombo, Dhaka, everywhere else. Sir has also done a number of physical security engagements for data centers in India and abroad. He's been involved for data center security for some larger banks, as well as for some data center security companies. And we are happy to highlight that he has served almost 22 years in the military. He retired as a lieutenant colonel from the Indian Army and handled combat instructional staff and multinational assignment. With that, I would like to hand over the baton to Sir to introduce the panelists and take the forum forward.
Thank you so much, Mitesh, for the very generous introduction. And it was an absolute pleasure to hear Akhilesh and Janil Sharma before that, who really set the stage well for the panel discussion. But I'm not going to let them steal the thunder from my panel, the panelists, because they are experts and practitioners in data center aspects, and they've been there for many years. So we would really love to hear from them. And I'm not going to speak much. It's the most lovable job that I have, that of the panel, of the moderator, where I just have to ask them the questions and they have to answer all those questions. But before we get off to a start, we mentioned, and Janil Sharma also mentioned, that couple of things which were driving the data center growth. One of those key things is, I just wanted to pick up on that, is the data localization norms, which are not just in India, but abroad as well. And Vietnam last week made it mandatory for all, the same way that India has done. They made it mandatory for data of their nationals to be stored only locally within data centers in Vietnam. So I'm sure now Vietnam is going to see a very huge spurt in growth in data centers. Also pointed out that only yesterday was the ban on new card employees, new card customers for American Express lifted by the RBI. In June, it was lifted for MasterCard because they had to comply with the data localization norms. So not just data localization, but also 5G, the growth of Internet of Things, the data that you store from your Fitbit, where does all of that growth go to, is really contributing in a huge way to the massive growth of data centers across the whole Asia Pacific region. Earlier, this was limited to tier 1 cities. Now, with the infrastructure in so many countries, especially like in India as well, coming up, the tier 2, tier 3 cities are also offering those 3-4 essentials which are required by data center operators: guaranteed electricity, water for cooling, a trouble-free and a hassle-free environment, land parcels which are free of encumbrances, and of course, fiber connectivity. So having said that, I just want to narrate one really interesting incident related to data center security, which I picked up about 3 years back. I had gone for the security audit of a data center in a city called Tachikawashi, which is on the outskirts of Tokyo. So Sandeep, I'm sure you would know that, being an entity data center. And I really thought that it's being such a massive data center, the whole security setup would be so complicated, so vast, that I would need to spend at least 2 days on site. And I was really pleasantly surprised to see that it was so simple and so simply integrated that the entire data center of 3 floors of huge data halls, there was only one security officer or guard, what we call, on duty for the entire data center 24/7. So there were 2 shifts. One was supposed to be for 12 hours and the other one supposed to be for the other 12 hours. And his only job was to sit in the command center and monitor all the security systems and raise an alarm if something went wrong. So that's the kind of security. And that's why I echo what Akhilesh said, that, tomorrow there'll be only 2 people in a data center, the man and the dog. So I definitely did see the man. I'm not sure about the dog. And I have a strong suspicion that tomorrow it's not going to be a dog. It might just be a robot. So that's where data center security is going. And without wasting too much time, let me introduce our panelists. So I in no order of sequence. So we have Vivek Daya with us, who's the managing director, and he's also the India lead for data centers in Cushman and Wakefield. He's a very senior real estate professional with experience in various kinds of asset classes. And he is really being responsible for expanding Cushman Wakefield's data center practice while managing all the new initiatives and key relationships for the firm. In the data center business, his team has concluded data site acquisitions of 450 plus megawatt worth of data centers, which obviously makes it pretty much a clear market leader in the industry. And he works with CIOs and CTOs of enterprises in determining their co-location or cloud needs, acquiring, renegotiating, or relocating their IT workloads in data centers across India. So welcome, Vivek. And if you could just say a quick hi to the audience. You're on mute, Vivek.
Yes, hi. Thanks, Sushil. Thanks for the introduction, and thanks for the opportunity. I think there are certain thoughts that I wanted to share.
Vivek, I'll just come to the.
Maybe we'll come to that once you've done the other introductions.
Yeah, I'll introduce everyone and then we one by one, and then we'll go around to the questions. Yeah, thanks, Vivek. Next, we have Anbu Shanmugam, who's the Vice President for BAM Digital Reality or Brookfield Asset Management. He's the Vice President and a data center expert, accomplished project leader with 25 years of experience in large-scale projects, networks, and telecom infrastructure. He's successfully built, deployed power, cooling, security systems, and civil infrastructure for 7 very large data centers right from concept to completion. He's an expert in hyperscale data center infrastructure development, strategies, and implementation of physical infrastructure for resilience and scale. He's previously worked with NTT, Jio, Airtel, and Reliance. So he's pretty much been there and done that. Welcome, Anbu. Really great to have somebody as experienced like you on the panel.
Thank you, Sushil. Thank you for the intro.
Hi.
Thank you for the opportunity.
The third panelist that I have today is Sandeep Dandekar, who's the Senior Director for NTT Global Data Centers and Cloud Infrastructure in India. He's got over 30 years of experience in techno-commercial businesses, and he's worked in different domains like real estate, procurement, supply chain, etc. He's also worked in domestic and international markets across sectors like IT, ITES, data centers, real estate, manufacturing, oil and gas, which is a huge gamut of experience. And prior to joining NTT, he was the country head of Bridge Data Centers. He was also part of the retail rollout with the Reliance Industries Limited, where he actually helped to build up that momentum for them to do their retail shops pan India. Before Reliance, he worked with Sintel, and he's also worked with companies based in Dubai, Yemen, and South Africa, and basically an engineer by profession. So welcome, Sandeep. I really look forward to hearing from you today.
Thank you. Thank you.
And the fourth panelist that I have today is, echoing some of the thoughts that Janil Sharma and Akhilesh also brought up, and she's going to speak on that. So Shaili Malu, she's the co-founder and ESG and climate change lead for a company called EI Square Solutions Private Limited, which is primarily looking at ESG and sustainability consultancy. And Shaili herself has a working experience of 18 years in the field of climate change, ESG, and sustainability. She's been an independent consultant since 2014. And before this current role, she was working in ENY and PwC altogether for 7 years. She's been an advisor to the Environmental Protection Training and Research Institute, the EPTRI, which is the nodal agency on climate change for the state of Telangana for the last 4 years, where she was helping them to guide various policies and government advisories. She's also empaneled with CII, APITCO, and NAPCON as an advisor and consultant, and she holds a master's degree in environmental engineering and management from IIT Kanpur. So really a pleasure to have somebody so qualified and experienced as you, Shaili. Welcome to the panel.
Thank you for having me here. Thank you.
Oh, yeah, thank you. And with that, we'll get off to a start. And I would like to start the discussion with Sandeep, where he has been instrumental in the growth of data centers for NTT and in general in the NTT field, in the data center field. So Sandeep, is the Asia Pacific region where we are located and where we are focusing on, is it ready for the rapid growth of data centers? What are the new hubs across the region? What is on offer from various governments? Are we ready for matching global requirements? And last but not the least, every country, especially like in India, there are foreign data center companies coming in, there are local companies. How do you see the competition? How do you see them competing with each other for the huge market share which is available?
Right. Very power-packed question. So we already have heard some fantastic content. So I will try and match the class. If there is a temptation to cover a lot of diversity, because this whole landscape of data centers and the associated aspects is so vast, but I will curb and kind of control that temptation to align with the time that we have available. As we briefly spoke the other day also, I'm not going to throw numbers, I'm not going to throw figures, because every one of us has a good sight of what data center is and what's the landscape, what's the growth landscape, how many megawatts we were and how many megawatts we are going to be. So I don't think we need those numbers. Those are available at a click of a button to anybody. It is important to understand how the fragrance of soil and touch of air is. I'm purposely saying fragrance of soil and touch of air to bring a twist to it. So very important thing here is there is absolutely a large growth horizon ahead of us. There is no question about it. But at the moment, if you ask, generally when you say that in any industry, which is a sunrise industry, there is a large growth horizon ahead, you tend to think that it's all about produce and sell. Life must be pretty easy for companies. They must be just bringing money and investing, but it's not so. While it is a very unique situation that I have encountered over these years, that we are sitting in a market which is growing, which is very promising. At the same time, it is disrupted already. It's not a bed of roses. Life is not very easy for people who are already in data centers. In the 3 years, we have seen major change. If we stand here and look back and look ahead, let's say 3 years behind and 3 years ahead, we have seen huge change. And what we're going to see is a much bigger change ahead. I would say in a single line, if I have to say, this seller's market as it used to be is now converted into buyer's market. And that has happened because of many forces. It is done so by the customers, obviously in their interest. Most of the service providers have also contributed to that change by getting into competition, by trying to be one up over the other. So buyer's market is indeed today a seller's market, and that changes a lot of things. With the global standards are coming into, whether it is design, the way you build, construct, safety standards, the green considerations. Everybody wants to control cooling, wants to consume minimum, wants to have maximum green index. So these all things have come up. Some of them are, you talked about international players and local players. I will also come to that. There are also cost challenges. There are supply challenges. The market is very, very impatient. And if you look at the contradiction, while there is cost challenge, the input costs are growing. So we all need to ensure that our delivery costs ultimately unitized, whether it is per megawatt, per square foot, per rack, whatever, has to go down. And market demands that. That is pushing us. At the same time, supply chain, because of whatever macroeconomics, those costs are going up. They are not consistent. You can't predict a cost in next 6 months. That puts challenge on your business plans. You can't exactly budget anything. Supply chain in terms of delivery times also is growing. While, as I said, the market is becoming impatient. Everything that you did in 6 months, today market wants in 2 months. What you do in 2 months, today market wants in 1 month. At the same time, the lead times, because of the global issues, the chip shortages, the war zones, and therefore the impact on logistics, they are going up. Also, we all know that in August there has been some change in data protection policy of India. We need to see where and how that takes shape. That's a major item in space, and which will have a substantial positive or negative impact. I don't want to say negative, but we need to wait and watch how that regulation is going to be spanned out. As far as critical enablements are concerned, I would say important towers are land and power and telco. Things in power and telco have improved a lot. It's no more a constraint. Availability of power generally, even if you go to B class, C class cities, is much easier. You find a substation nearby which is feasible. It's not a constraint anymore. Similarly, about telco, 3-4 years ago, it was not easy to go to any site unless you really check the feasibility of a telco provider, which is not so much now. So that penetration has happened, which is a good thing. Approvals and incentives is second. Claiming your incentives is second tower, where we definitely want to see improvement. As you very rightly said, we have data center policies in some states. In some states, it is surprisingly still awaited. They have been long in discussion, but they are still not published. If you look at these policies, again, they are diverse. It is good to be diverse, but at times it becomes complex. You really need to be very, very cautious about what is allowable in what form by which state. It may be slightly tweaked in other state. So one has to be very, very cautious. It needs specialized study, specialized effort. That could be possibly synchronized and streamlined, which is one area of desired improvement, in my opinion. The build part of data center is completely changing because of the density increasing, the floor loads, the floor heights are increasing. There is, as I said, there is cost pressure on core and shell. We also are now seeing more and more data centers open, conceptually open to look at precast, which is a major change. There is a pre-engineering building also now in the consideration. This has a trade-off of saving of time and cost. In sell and operate also there are substantial changes. A lot of technology, like we said, dog and man, that we are already seeing that kind of a change of more and more automation, more and more intelligence driven from brick and mortar. We talked about new players. So there is a very interesting mix of local players and those players who have recently come with their global footprint, global experience, as well as, very interestingly, you see there are very, very I would say positions of advantage. Some if I may call them vendor, if I may call them critical service providers to data centers, like power, telco, large developers, because they think I have telco. Somebody says because I am in power. Some developers think because I am in construction, and some PE funds because they are rich in available funds. All of them are now focusing their eyeing on data center, because this all is a critical supply to data center mix. So we have local players who have recently come into play, either from telco, as I said, or from construction stream, or from power stream. We have local. Anbu, you're saying something?
Oh, fine.
Sorry. I thought you were saying, and I was not able to hear. There are existing local players, obviously, who are maturing, who are trying to come up to the play. Global best practices are something which international players are bringing, and they are increasing the field of level play for everyone. They have an advantage. So these are advantages of local players. They know the market, they know the local conditions. There is a lot of India-centric learning, and all these new entrants which come from overseas are undergoing that learning curve, which is not easy, which is not short. So that's clearly a position of advantage for local players. At the same time, the best practices is a strength of global players. They have already been doing it in other places, and this is an area where the domestic players have to do some catch up. Also, these international players bring with them relationships with customers. So selling is lesser issue for them compared to the local people. So that's how I think the whole mix is. As far as new locations are concerned, you rightly said, Indonesia, Malaysia, Thailand, these are new locations coming up in the APAC, and I won't say they are competing with India, but they are formidably coming up. They are definitely an option, an alternative. And if the data protection bill, as I said, needs to be seen how it spans out, and if it doesn't quite protect the way we think it will, then that's going to be a major lever for all of us to reconsider our business plans in the light of that. I leave it at that.
Thank you, Sandeep. That's an excellent end-to-end overview of the whole market situation, and I really take the points about global best practices being brought in by the global players, but the local market understanding brought in by the local players, as well as people jumping into the data center market from the real estate business, from the power business, from the telco business, and it's bound to happen because they see huge growth, they see huge opportunity. So thank you very much.
I take more time.
No, it's okay. Thank you so much for that overview. I will not comment on that. It's only the other panelists who are going to have your happiness after that for taking up the time. But having said that, since the focus of our discussion primarily is data center security, I wanted, Anbu, you've been in the data center business for so long. You've seen global best practices, you've seen local situations. If you could just throw some light on how you, as a developer and an operator of these data centers, how you see the overall threat landscape, especially in the Asia Pacific region. And based on that, what sort of security concepts do you come up with? How do you implement the security from the people, process, technology? So over to you, Anbu.
Thank you, Sushil. It is a fantastic question and rightly pointed to me. Right, yeah. Yes, of course, if I touch upon certain points, let me put the points into the numbers. I'll cover the entire question into the 5 points. So let me take 4 points into the micros on the design. How do we design a data center into the security perspective? What are all the evolving changes we are seeing over a period of time? So I have been in the industry almost close to 15 years when the start of the new data center, first data center came in, and we are just building into the hundreds of megawatts now. So obviously the first one is the procedures and policies that is come by the standards as well as by the experience, whatever you are saying, right? These are all regional experiences that certain data centers will have certain kind of spec. This is the thickness of the wall, this should be the thickness of the boundaries, height of the gate. There are plenty of requirements coming in terms of it evolves over a period of time. 10 years back it was something different. We used to have a 3-meter high boundary wall. Now we are having a full-fledged boundary walls and multiple security layers. We never spoke about 9 layers of security. Now we are discussing this. these are all the evolving, over a period of time. We have learned a lot. We keep implementing. There are codes. There are experiences coming from the other part of the world, from the US, from Europe. What are the standards to be implemented, right? So this is one always. Second is the non-negotiable technology layer. So you set up a process and policies, fine. Will it end there? Obviously, you have to create a non-negotiable technologies that, some biometric, thermal imaging. These are all CCTV coverages, intelligence attached to a CCTV that gives a pop-up, this is something bad is happening in this place. So the unusual activity is happening. You keep tuning that, the processes and put in the right places there, right? So this technology layer, will it be sufficient? Obviously, it is not, right? People tend to outsmart the technologies, whatever technology you implement. So a few years back, we used to have a man trap with a weight in it, right? Just it has to match for a person's weight and it should be the center. Today, we have the thermal imaging of the same man trap that it ensures that there is only one entry into the data center at given point of time. So we keep evolving it, because people tend to outsmart it, we have to outsmart them, right? That's the competition. So, right, we do that. Next comes into this very important human layer. Of course, there is a lot of philosophies around it. We will eliminate complete human element into the securities. Given the scenario that, where we are today, that, especially our socio-political factors, which I will be touching upon as a last point. Obviously, the human layer is super important when it comes to Indian, Asian data centers, right? We cannot leave it to just to the technology. There are plenty of aspects, there are plenty of people to test you, right? Test your technology, whether it is foolproof or not, right? To make it flexible at the same time that, technology brings in certain kind of rigidity that doesn't evolve over a period of time. You are finding some threads. Obviously, you have to create a human layer that ensures that gives the flexibility to you to operate. Otherwise, you will get a lot of complaints. You're not going to put a restriction around. Somebody comes in, you have to always be a guest to your data center, always to ensure that the security principles always respected, that, you have to balance it out. So in this place, the human layers are very much important, right? This is where the trainings, audits are super important, where, MitKat and many people are getting in. We keep training the people, getting them to understand what are the latest threats coming in, right? So this is one aspect. Is it good enough? Obviously, there should be a commitment from the leadership and from the entire team, passionate enough that, security is something like that. It will be spoken when it is broken, right? Until then, nobody sees any aspect of it. People take it for granted, right? So for months and months, it may run without any incident. There can be one incident that will spoil your entire business, right? One small incident. Somebody try to outsmart you that, either it is a pilferage or it planned attack, something can happen. So you look for one incident of your lifetime. So that itself is, how mammoth it would be, that please understand. So this is where the human element comes in, right? Obviously, the next is the mindset of all the stakeholders, be it the customer, be it a developer, be it a vendor who wants to enter into the site. See, here it is, right? You have to give the hard disk for vaulting. So it's permitted outgo from the data center. Your data is going for vaulting. So at the same time, somebody tried to take it from your pen drive. So how do we outsmart them, right? These are all things get tested. So on the procedures and audits, this is all perception. So one customer will say that your security is so tight, it takes 5 minutes to cross it, and another customer will say that no, it is very lax, right? These are all perception issues. We have to handle it. So the people need to be highly matured enough to do that. So on this security design, we do that, TVRA analysis, threat vulnerability risk analysis at the start of the project. It keeps evolving. It is not a static document. Once I have done an assessment, I am not going to stop it there. I have to keep it, make it more relevant as it goes, right? Site selection is a very big criteria that, whatever I am going to do on these ESA phase 1, phase 2, security layer design, so many security layers, and engineering, we appoint specialist consultant to do a security design. So not just MEP design, we take it separately. give a great care for that. So these are all the
Thank you.
factors
So much.
getting in. So
Very-
over and above, if you get into one macro factor that is very important for Asian countries is the political stability, internal security.
Right.
So this question, whoever comes in the other part of the world, this comes in first, right? This is given, right? Whatever you do at a micro level, I do everything. So there will be a great factor on the political stability of a country, of a state, and the internal security perspectives and the inclusive growth. These are all the bigger aspects that gives the greater confidence to an external customer who comes from Europe or US, who thinks that fence is not a big element for him, whereas the fence is a very big element for an Indian data center.
Thank you very much, Anbu. Very fascinating. And I just picked up one thing which I want to, if we have time, I'll take it up further. If not, I'll speak to you separately. You said in Asia Pacific region, from the security perspective, we can't rely completely on the technology alone. So we'll hold that for now, but I wanted to
that's our mindset.
I wanted to understand a little more in detail, time permitting, but for now I will move on to Vivek. And Vivek, you've been interacting in the field of data centers with everyone, all these players that they talked about, whether it was the real estate component, whether it was the power component, whether it was the telco operators, whether it's the water providers. You've interacted with everyone. You understand the compliances and standards which come in by the global players. You understand the local regulations. So we would really love to hear from you, and if you can give us a couple of insightful examples how this whole gamut of governance, compliance, application of the correct global laws, standards, how all of that fits in to the whole field of data centers.
Yeah, thanks, Sushil. And before I come to compliance, there was so much of very interesting conversation that has happened so far. I wanted to just share a few thoughts. 3 key words pop out for me. One is we're discussing this for APAC. 2, we are talking about security. That's the theme of the summit. And finally, of course, I'll focus on the compliance and the governance bit. From an APAC perspective, so one of the speakers earlier mentioned that we are bigger than EMEA. I wanted to just put that in perspective. If we look at hyperscale cloud revenues of let's say 2022 beginning, globally it's about 125 billion. We have EMEA at around just about 25 billion, and APAC is already 35 plus. Americas, North and South, all put together is far ahead, between 68 to 70. So they are far ahead. But yes, it is correct to say that APAC is far ahead of EMEA when it comes to hyperscale cloud revenues. It's also fairly correct to say that a massive amount of investment is taking place within APAC from APAC regional players and the global giants. In fact, as Kushner Wakefield, we do rating and ranking of cities across the world, and our 2022 ranking had 3 APAC cities featuring in the top 10 in this order: Singapore, Hong Kong, and Sydney. My gut feel, 5 years from now, we will have an Indian city in the top 10 globally. It's a matter of time, considering how much investment that's taking place here. So that's just to put perspective from an APAC angle. Coming to security, and I'm sure many of you are already aware of it, that even the data protection bill, which is probably getting redrafted all over again now, but when it was put into the parliament for the first time, security as a term probably featured 30 times in the data protection bill. So the government is taking it seriously as well. It's not just about us. And it talks about that it defines what security is, who is responsible for it, and goes on to say what are the penalties as well. So there are challenges that a lot of people in the sector will have to keep in mind going ahead in the future once this bill becomes an act. So that's one thing to be kept in mind. Security is paramount. Now, but because the security legislation hasn't come into act, we can't really talk too much about it. It's still a bill. It's being done across the world as well. So let me just focus on the governance and the compliance part of it. We see a lot of interest and seriousness from all the data center operators, whether they are Indian or international, whether they are old in India or new, to make sure that they are following all possible governance and compliance norms which are already there. So the challenge that many of them faced earlier, and I think Sandeep briefly hinted upon that in his conversation, that we did not have enough policies to make sure that there is clarity on how to build international grade tier 3, tier 4 equivalent data centers in India. So for example, if you have to stack DGs, if you really don't need so much of parking if you're in an IT land use property. So those challenges were there 2-3 years ago. Now, thankfully, as land being a state subject and data center policies have started coming up in various states. So those policies or regulation related challenges are gradually getting resolved. So you're not worried that, okay, if I buy this piece of land, I will have to necessarily build a basement because of the parking norms. Those things are getting clarified, and a lot of progress has been made in the last 2 years on that front. The other thing where I see tremendous focus from everybody in the data center space is sustainability and the compliance and the regulations related to that. Now, I don't think we yet have sustainability as a part of a law in India so far. It's there in some mature markets. I'll come to that. But currently, ESG being such a critical factor for all corporates across the world, we see seriousness for all of the data center operators, their tenants, the developers, to make sure that what they're building is sustainable, that they're meeting the government law norms, and they're as green as possible. So not just in securing green power, but in the building process, in the design process, they're constructing something which is as per the local domestic Indian green building norms. So that's a very, very positive move from the industry standpoint. They are making sure that they are very proactive on it. Because internationally, if you look at it, there are challenges. India still being a growing economy, trying to become 5 trillion, we will continue to invest in green power and power infrastructure for the next 10-20 years because the Indian economy needs it. So that's beneficial for data centers. But in mature markets, it's only in mature markets that data centers end up seen as power guzzlers, and the anecdotes that you were referring to. So there are challenges, for example, in UK, where local municipalities are being questioned by residents that why is power not being diverted to the upcoming township development for residential purposes, and why is that power going to data centers? I don't see that challenge coming in the near future in India, but those challenges are being faced in mature markets. And interestingly, mature markets are also looking at huge deployments. 100 megawatt data centers were unheard of a few years back, and we are seeing so many of them coming up in India. We are only seeing bigger and bigger investments in megawatts in mature markets because their data consumption is even higher, their cloud business even higher. So we can only expect more and more and bigger data centers to come in. So that challenge will happen in mature markets across APAC. The moratorium in Singapore has been changed a bit, but it's still not enough for Singapore as a country or as a regional hub. So I don't see challenges from regulation so much so in India so far. The final Data Protection Act will decide what the security happens. But from a compliance standpoint, I think all the data center operators are making sure they are not just up to the mark, but setting new standards and making sure they're meeting all the global standards. So that's a comforting note for everybody in the data center space.
Thank you, Vivek. That was a really fascinating insight. And, I just, when you said about how mature economies and mature societies are tackling this issue of sustainability, and of course, Shaili will speak more on that. We were doing the TVRA, the Threat Vulnerability Risk Assessment of a potential data center in the heart of Tokyo. And, one of the strange concerns which came up, which we had to highlight to the developer, was that the local citizens were very concerned that the noise levels which are generated by this operation should not disturb their daily life, because they had been used to an automobile plant on that same plot of land, and they thought it will have the same kind of noise levels. So they were ready to take up the issue with their local councillors if anything noisier than that happened. So really fascinating to see how societies across the world handle these issues. Thank you, Vivek. Your experiences, your examples were really spot on. and we'll try and come back to that if there's time. And you led on to the next speaker, that is Shelly, about sustainability and how it's not part of the law. So Shelly, we'd like to hear from you how the whole concern of sustainability and ESG, when you relate it to data centers, how good are we? Where should we be going in the country or in the entire APAC region, and what is being done currently? So over to you, Shelly.
Thank you, Sushil. Thanks a lot for having me on this panel, first of all. And it has been lovely hearing each and everyone speak so far. I think my own personal knowledge also in the domain increased as a result of this. So thank you for that. And thanks to Vivek for leading actually to the points that were there. And his point on power guzzlers was bang on. I was, thinking of putting that as the start point itself. And with the example of UK. So he's right there. So the overall energy consumption that these centers have, data centers have across the globe, is much more than what UK as a whole has. That's an indication of where the energy consumption is heading when we put all data centers together. So it's more than a country's consumption. Now, I'll take a step back and go to some other points. First of all, going back to a very basic thing before some examples and all we talk about, is because I think we have a large audience, a very varied audience, is that people should not mix up the terms sustainability, ESG, and climate change. The three are very different. And the moment that gets mixed up, what happens on ground is also a mix and match. And somewhere, as was said by the earlier speaker, that in that hindsight, we may lose out on that one particular incident of threat, which can come as a result of ESG, sustainability, or climate change, and completely impact either the operations, or if partial operations, it would be having a major economic impact on the data center operator itself. So, and the third point that I would like to say is we should take always a value chain approach. Sometimes the data centers are seen quite independently. They are not seen as a part of a large value chain. They're just seen as having been placed at that one point. I could be wrong in some of them, but because you guys are so much on the field with it, but many of the vulnerability assessments also at times tend to be very focused on that piece and leave out the next kilometers and kilometers and hundreds of kilometers of lines which are running underwater, which are running under sea, and so on. So those are all aspects which must come together when we talk about threats to data security, and obviously even to data centers, because they are interlinked with them. So we cannot leave them aside. That's one point. Coming to the ESG sustainability. So sustainability, I always say, this is my very personal thought, it is a holistic definition or of a good to do activities. When you say I'm doing on sustainability, you're doing everything on the parameters of environment and social, but it's more like a good to do thing. But the moment it's ESG, you're looking at the risks, very, very specific risks that can be posed on account of environment, social, or governance issues. Very beautiful example on social has just been pointed out by you, Sushil, and by the earlier speakers as well. So there could be issues coming from these, and one has to do a systematic risk assessment on ESG. It cannot be a risk assessment which is done in bits and pieces, because data centers today, the way people view is not in totality. They take maybe just the green building part of it, or say just the green data center part of it. So the hotspot becomes power. And the moment you address power, it is thought that climate change has been addressed, but that's not true. So just by saying you have addressed power, you have not even addressed environment. The other big threat which I see coming to data centers globally and data centers in this region, especially in India, is the threat of water. because water is a shared resource. Water is shared by everyone. So many industries we know have been banned for using fresh water, using groundwater, and so many sources of water. So it's obviously there are regulations around how the water is used by data centers or everyone, but then the stringentness of that, it's only going to increase with time. So all data center operators, while they set up the entity itself, need to look at water not only one time, as but was being rightly said. Water and climate risk is something that should be assessed every 3 years, every 5 years, because the policy landscape is also changing. India is entering a very different policy landscape when it comes to energy and climate now. There are announcements which have happened in the past 2 weeks, not specific to data centers, but specific to energy and climate change related markets getting set up in the country. We've already had the RPO and REC kind of things. Now we are moving towards climate markets. When that happens, there's a different segment of governance stream which will flow. And it may not be directly impacting the data centers at times, but there is an indirect long value chain in which they will get impacted, either from the cost perspective or from the perspective of being more and more green power users. So it would be one of these through which they will get impacted. I see that as a point coming up in future specific to India.
Right.
So if we look at environment, I think the top 2 things to be looked at are energy and water. Now, water, as I was seeing, a lot of data centers are trying to utilize, reuse water and also look at alternates to water. But honestly, these are good short-term measures. In the long term, an alternate chemical which is proposed, or a chemical infusion which is proposed for water usage in the data centers may not be enough, or may not alone be enough for the cooling purposes. Probably more greener options have to be thought, which are associated with the location. So, you instead of making it a hotspot of heat, you infuse measures which will cool down the microclimatic conditions itself will be such that the temperature of that area is down, which indirectly impacts how your data centers are going to work. So there could be a change of 1 to 2 degrees, which can easily be brought about. And this has a very good cascading effect on data centers. These are thoughts which probably require longer duration of implementation. They are not like your the cooling towers, etc., where the timing is very less. You can instantly get the impact, but these measures will require a 3 to 5 year duration for them to actually become implementable and usable. So that's the difference that is there. The third point, which I see still is a concern, is the material that goes into the data centers itself getting created. Now, material is in 2 ways. Material is for the building and material is for the data center equipments. And we were listening to the earlier speakers where they spoke about supply chain and the supply chain cost constraints and the supply chain timing. Why is the cost constraint coming in the supply chain? Because the material that goes into building of data centers or the data equipments for the data center is a very precious metal with less availability. And India, we must carefully assess and analyze that how much of it we have and how much of it we are importing. So the dependence on import can make challenges for the data centers in future, similar to something that we are looking at when we talk about EVs in the Indian context. This is the second point I thought is important we look at it. I mean, every organization looks at it, and also the circularity has to be better established with the government regulations which are there. Coming towards the electronic waste, all data centers also maybe the time frame of generation of electronic waste and the kind of electronic waste changes, but the mechanism of dealing with it also has to be more robust with the times to come. So this is from the environment point of view. And from the social side of it, probably data centers, as you mentioned very rightly, where the moment the word social comes, everybody starts thinking only about the community. It's not just the community alone, but social is looking at the security also, which is the topic for today, that how the security is happening. So I will address this from the other side. So here is the data center provider, and on the other end are its consumers. When you go to consumer organizations, large organizations, many of them today kind of think of what kind of data security measures they have at their end. They have a ISO 27001 certification, they have certain policies, DLP policy, etc., and they say the data security is over. But there's a need for these industries to go back and think that, does it end here, or my data is actually stored elsewhere where there could be physical security threats? Some companies, large companies, have had that thought, like Apple, for example, when it has committed to a net zero commitment. Now it is looking and made to see that all its data centers are completely operating on green energy. It is also considering that how to bring in the vulnerabilities on account of climate change with the data center space into their own transitions. So these are the new dynamics which will get evolved. Today it's Apple and maybe Amazon, two companies which are very proactively working towards it. But in due course, this dynamics will change. Many more companies will be looking in this direction, and data centers have to be ready and prepared to be able to respond more on a commercial basis or more on a market basis on how these market threats. So a different dimension of security from compared to what we are talking about needs to be looked at here from the customer point of view. And governance issues, obviously, I think have been spoken about, that how the governance matters. So I think largely these are my thoughts. I would like to take a minute more to, if there is some time left with us.
Yeah, okay. So I guess we can take a minute with you because we started about 10 minutes late. So just a quick one, if you could wrap up so that.
Okay. So I would like to only take a minute to talk about the climate vulnerabilities to data centers. And climate vulnerability to data centers today comes in two ways. Often it is just thought of, yes, lightning is one, the flooding is second, the third is the temperature rise itself. And different scenarios have to be built in, because if there's a temperature rise of 1 degree, your entire data center energy planning goes in for a toss. Some data centers have already taken it into account, but the regular planning of that probably, and the regular monitoring and implementation of that is something which many of the Indian smaller data centers, not always small, but the newer data centers may or may not be looking at. And it will lead to greater threats. The location wise, the flood vulnerability assessments also tend to take place, but then these flood vulnerability assessments are based on 100 years data, often not looking into the projections of the climate based flood vulnerability which is about to come, and leading to those one-off incidents of failure on account of that. So this is how I think I view, summing it up, that don't look at ESG or climate change in the data centers only from the point of power guzzlers, but take it up from the point of water, energy, your location security threats, from the climate threats that may emanate in the long run from policy as well as the location. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Shelly, for sharing your thoughts and some really thought-provoking issues you brought up. And you know, when you were talking about the requirement of water for cooling, there are already systems in place where you can immerse servers in non-conducting fluids for cooling. And to take it one step further, Microsoft and others put the whole data center under sea to reduce on the cooling costs. Of course, that came with its own technical challenges and security challenges, but people are working towards that. Thank you for all that. And you know, I know I'm pretty mindful of the time. I don't want to eat into the other panel's time as well. But we've had some really thought-provoking issues being brought up by everyone, including Sandeep and Anbu and Vivek and Shelly. There are lots of very interesting questions which have been put into the Q&A box by some members of the audience. So Kuber, Avijit, Prasad, PK Kurian, Vipin, thank you. Really nice questions. And what I'll request my panelists, because we may not have time to take on each of these questions, is if you could go into the Q&A box and where it relates to you, if you could type in the answers, I think that would be really great takeaways for the audience. So you know, apologies for not being able to handle all the audience questions. But thank you very much. And it's been a very fascinating discussion so far, hopefully leading on to the next stage where Pawan, who's moderating the next panel, is focusing purely on security perspectives of data centers. So thank you very much. Request you all to come on the screen for a last farewell wave. Sandeep, Anbu, Shelly, and Vivek, if you could just wave out to the audience for a bye. And thank you, Mitesh, for being patient with us. We overshot by about 5 minutes, but we started late. So I'm okay with that. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you, Sushil. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Vivek. Thank you, Sandeep. Are you there?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, Sandeep. Yeah, thank you
Thank
so much. Thank you, Shelly.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vivek.
Thank you.
Thank you, Anbu. And I'll request, like I said, I'll request all of you to please type in your answers into the Q&A box so that the audience really gets satisfied with the opinions of the experts. Have a very good morning ahead. Over to you, Mitesh.
Thank you. Thank you. The panel one was really engaging. I think the spectrum of information shared was right from what is happening in data centers to how should we look at different layers in security in data center to governance coming up, or what are the best practices that are coming up from local as well as global players, and then moving on to sustainability. So thank you, panel one, for a very engaging session. On that note, we move to the next segment. The next segment is the demo of MitKat's AI-assisted risk tracking platform. The platform has been specially developed to analyze risks that come across to our assets, including data centers from various sources, right from environment, geopolitical, and other sources, right? So we have with us Richa, who is going to do the demo for the PRI tool. We'll request everybody to please have a look at our tool. And in case you have very specific queries, the MitKat team is always willing to help you on that. So over to you, Richa, for the demo.
Thank you, sir. It has been an enlightening session so far. I am Ruchi Emul, and I'm an analyst with the Predictive Risk Intelligence team at MitKat Advisory. And I will be giving a demonstration of MitKat's Risk Intel Tracker today. So please allow me to share my screen in the meantime. I hope my screen is visible.
Yes, it is visible. Yeah.
All right. So this is the homepage of MitKat's Risk Intel platform. And on the homepage, you will be able to see certain green colored geotags. Now, these are the asset locations of any particular organization. And you will also be able to see certain diamond-shaped icons on the screen. Now, these are the alerts created by our analysts who are monitoring round the clock. Now, if you click on any particular diamond-shaped icon, you will be able to access a detailed description, background, impact, and recommendation of the same event that is to impact the operations of any given organization. Similarly, on the right-hand side of the portal here, we have a vertical panel where you will be able to access all the alerts that are curated and analyzed by our analysts throughout the day. And for your own convenience, we have also provided a keyword and filter-based search. Before delving into the other features of our portal, I would like to go through the display features of the portal as well. If you go to Profile and click on Settings, we also have the option to switch to a dark theme for your convenience. Similarly, we also have a switch between a normal map and a satellite themed map. Now I will take you through all the features on our homepage here. The first feature is the event archives. Now, if you may have noticed that all our events are accompanied by a unique tracking ID. Now, you can search for any particular alert based on its tracking ID and download the same. Or you can also download all the events for a particular month and a year for a quick internal circulation. We also have an upcoming events section where all the events that are to take place in the upcoming week are displayed here. And now this is very important for organizations that hold weekly meetings. And this list can be very handy when you're discussing certain risks that could disrupt operations for any particular organization. Similar to the upcoming event section, we also have an event calendar. Now, this is a more of a static calendar in the sense that it only includes events that occur on an annual basis, such as religious events or festivals or birth anniversaries. And the same can be filtered on the basis of country. Next, we also have a weekly forecast. Now, this feature is an amalgamation of the previous two features that I've explained before. It includes both static and dynamic events, and the same can be filtered on the basis of the geography, whether it's India, South Asia, Asia Pacific, EMEA, or the Americas. We also have an analytical tool created by our analysts called Kaleidoscope, which is a purely analytical tool and is different from the features I've shown before. It shows a brief forecast of the events that have had a disruptive effect on businesses operating in different regions. Clicking on any of these events will take you to a more detailed forecast and development and interplay of certain factors that have an impact on the trajectory of these events. We also have a resources section, which is essentially a repository of all the advisories, special reports, and risk reviews that MitKat publishes on a regular basis on all its platforms. And the same can be downloaded in the form of a PDF for a quick internal circulation. We have a city brief section as well. Now, this forms an important feature of our travel risk management services that MitKat provides. If I go to any particular city, for example, I've chosen Sydney from Australia, a brief one-page document of Sydney will be displayed on my screen, which I can also download in the form of a PDF. Now, this document contains important information regarding the current COVID-19 situation, any emergency numbers, hospitals, or the current situation related to women's safety, terrorism, or civil unrest. Now, if any employee or people from any organization want to travel to any city, they can refer to this document before they undertake any travel. We have about 90 locations that we cover as a part of this feature. We also have an inbuilt query system in our portal, which we consider as a unique selling point, where organizations can contact us and they can also ask questions to our analysts who are monitoring throughout the day regarding any event or alert they want to know about. We next have our rhyme feature. Let me just show you that. So this is our rhyme feature, which is an inbuilt software developed as a part of our portal, which uses artificial intelligence to populate alerts and events in real time as they occur. Now if anyone has missed out on any of the events during their monitoring and any analyst wants to go back in time, we also have features for that, where you can download certain events from the past couple of hours, and the same will be downloaded in the form of an Excel sheet. Now, for example, an event that has occurred in Philippines has populated on the screen. So this feature provides real-time updates to all the analysts. We also have a keyboard monitor search for your convenience. Next, we also have a threat exposure feature for any of the organizations. Now, this includes an organization risk rating. Now, the figure that you see on the left-hand side of the screen, which is 1.53, it is not an arbitrary figure. If you click on the question mark here, you will be able to see the kind of scaling that we've used to rate the risk levels for any particular organization. And we also have the number of events that are currently impacting your organization's locations. The same can be filtered for the past week, the past month, or the current events. We also have a distribution of risk in percentage over here. Now, since we have been coping up with the COVID-19 crisis and also certain other health issues such as monkeypox and swine flu, the risk for travel risk and regulatory shows an increased risk percentage on this map here. this is followed by certain major risk events and also the top risk categories that that could disrupt any location of your organization. Next, we have our COVID-19 dashboard, which provides important statistics relating to the COVID-19 crisis in India. Now, these statistics are taken solely from official government sources, so we do not rely on any open media sources for this page. The same can be taken for different metro cities as well as all the states across India. And for the different cities and states, we also have a section for implemented measures where all the current lockdown status or restrictions and guidelines implemented by the civic authorities have been listed for your convenience. And MitKat also publishes certain state-wise and city-wise guidelines and also India Vaccine Tracker. And the same can be downloaded from this last section of our COVID-19 dashboard. Now, this brings me to the end of my portal demonstration. I hope this has been helpful. Please do feel free to get in touch with us for a more detailed demonstration and also for a one-on-one session with us. Thank you.
Thank you, Ruchi. My apologies for spelling your name wrong earlier, but no, you provided a great insight on our predictive risk intelligence portal. Thank you so much. You can unshare now, Ruchi. Okay, on that note, we move to the second panel discussion. The second panel discussion would be moderated by none other than Mr. Pawan Desai. Pawan sir is the CEO and co-founder for MitKat Advisory Services and MitKat Global Consulting Private Limited. On a personal note, he has participated in many prestigious forums and spoken in forums of OSAC, ACSG, ACES, Business Continuity Institute, and Duty of Care. He has also been a distinguished ex-Indian Navy officer with specialization in submarine operations. Pawan sir is an acknowledged thought leader in the security risk management industry and a staunch supporter of convergence of cyber and physical security domain, both in asset as well as on people front. On that note, Pawan sir, I would like to not take much time and give you and hand over the baton to you because you have 6 panelists on your side and you will require more time today.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Mitesh, for the kind introduction, and hope all the panelists are there. Yeah, Dhananjay, I can see he's on site and he's joined from a plant. We have Jyoti, Anand, and Anand. Can I see Vijay Wag? We can see you, but we can see you reverse. Yeah, this is 180 degrees. On that, and we have Colonel Alok Jha. So fascinating insights from both the keynotes and the first panel discussion. The amount of array of discussion what we had, so different points which came right from governance to sustainability, to security. So many different aspects have been spoken about. It's really fascinating. I think I'll be funneling down this session and we'll be focusing more towards the security aspect. But as I understood from the earlier session also, I think security will have to take a larger role in terms of definition. So security will not be only about physical, it will be convergence, it will be cyber, physical combined, it has to be governance, it has to be futuristic, it has to be sustainability as a part of it. I know organizationally we can have different structures, but ultimately it's about securing a data center or basically not even the data center, that the data which has been entrusted by the clients, and ultimately securing that and everything and around that, right from reputation to physical access to the logical access, everything will form a part of it. So what I'll do is very quickly take you through the introduction. I think we have a very diverse panel, right from professionals from industry, consulting, experts from various domains who have got into the data center recently. So we have very diverse field of people, very diverse experience. So I think I'm sure it is going to be very, very fascinating, and hope, Mitesh, as you said, I have 6 panelists. I hope I am able to stay within the timeline. So please pardon me if I interrupt any one of you, because we have a shortage of time on that. Just let me just introduce each one of you. This is more on the alphabetic order. Is there what we are going to talk about security as a business differentiator or a business enabler. A very warm welcome to Colonel Alok Jha. He is the Facilities Security Director for NTT India, recently joined NTT. Alok is a special forces veteran with over 33, almost 3.5 decades of experience as physical security, crisis management, incident response, incident investigation. I think I can go on and on about his achievements and his expertise. He has also worked with Airtel, Morgan Stanley in consulting domain. And as I said, he's currently the country security head for NTT Global Data Centers and Cloud Services. While in government, as he belongs to special forces, he has served in very high threat areas. In northern India, and major part of the career is headed the Indian Army training team in a friendly country in Southeast Asia. Also, welcome Alok sir for this session. We have now Anand and Anand. So I'll be differentiating Anand Axis and Anand Genetec for ease for everyone else. So Anand Axis comes with the industry experience of almost two decades plus. Anand has acquired knowledge about security industry by working at industry leaders like HID for access control and access for surveillance. I think they are the best in both the domains, which can be. He has also been at Axis for about a decade. That's a really, really long time, and currently managing global end customers for APAC, and he is based out of Singapore. Good afternoon, Anand, and welcome to the session. We have another Anand from Genetec. Anand he's the country manager for Genetec, and he operates out of Bangalore. But he manages India and SAARC operations. Genetec is as we all know, is a global industry leader in providing unified software platform for physical security operations and business intelligence. Both Axis and Genetec are partners for the session also. So welcome, Anand. For the session. Then I'll move on to Dhananjay Birwadkar. He's the Director for Design Consulting and Project Management at MitKat Advisory. Dhananjay has more than a decade of experience of handling variety of critical projects, security design and project management both. He has worked in domains of physical security, design, automation, technology transformation, smart and safe cities, rolling out of e-governance projects, IoT, and the list goes on and on. He has been working in functions like business development, pre-sales, system design, solution architect, and also as an on-ground system implementer. He specializes in tender and bid management, vendor management projects, and also has done fair amount of work in India and abroad in data center designing and project management. Welcome, Dhananjay. I think Jyoti Meena, thanks for joining this session. She is the Data Center Security Operation Manager for Microsoft. She has almost 17 plus years of risk experience in security management, loss prevention, and vigilance across various domains of physical security and data center environments. Presently, she is in Microsoft, and before that, she has also worked with a company like Tata Communications and many other, which is there. She has experience of formulating security processes, guidelines, and implementation strategies, and has experience of working across region, and will be leveraging her experience on that. And last but not the least, Vijay Wagh. He's a senior manager at Jacobs. Vijay is a known consultant in the data center. Not many in India we have with such a rich experience, which is there. He has done data center projects across 38 countries. That's why I said not many can and brag that kind of experience. Yeah, he has worked with L&T, Voltas, Godrej before joining Jacobs. and he handles the data center capital and operation cost analysis for various data centers. Also, he is expert in the ROI calculation. So any expertise required in that domain, you can always go and touch base with Vijay. So I'll start with Vijay because I introduced you the last, and we'll start with you on that thing. With such a vast experience and in various countries, almost 38 countries you mentioned about that. How do you see the technology, the way technology is changing rapidly, and everyone is moving towards technology, everyone wants integration, all those kind of things which are happening. How do you see security is taking a central role, and how have you seen the whole journey evolving over the last few years, and what do you see the future looks like? Vijay.
Hi, good afternoon, first of all. Are you able to hear me properly?
Yes, loud and clear.
Yeah. So, as everybody knows, this is a critical infrastructure mission. So everybody, when they start projects, everybody thought about the putting up the redundancy, putting up the data center for getting the lots of ROI and all. But at the same time, when they go to sell into the market, the first USP come to the customer's mind: how my data is secured, what technologies was used by the persons who's going to use this data center premises, that premises, which kind of technologically advanced security is available. Like there is a few things which very specifically known to the everyone, that the people now, every data center customers who is going to engage the white space in data center, they ask for the reliability study. In that reliability study, the security part, which is very, very important and very precisely asked by the end customers. Several the big data center team members, they are now using USP as a security as a USP for them. Like reliability study nowadays, if you can go to any data center person who is asking for that, they are going to use the reliability study as the major thing in their RFP when they make the RFP. In data centers, as you know, in COVID-19, when they approached the COVID, all projects of entire world was stuck. But the data centers and data, everybody was using, because everybody is sitting on the home and everybody has increased the uses of the data like anything. It goes in 10, 100 folds. So because of that, the data center requirement also come up. And when anything comes up, so definitely the other threats like your data attack, your viruses, so many kind of things can be happen. So for that, the security point of view, there is so many things needs to be implemented in this area. And because of that, the several people who are in the data center market now, they are going for the very advanced technology. Now, when we are I can say the data center businesses are hardly 12 to 14 years back, the data center business has come up. And that time, there was very few security aspects that everybody was taking care for the physical security, L1, L2, L3. Now people are talking from L0 to L7, and now people are giving that not L7, I need to go for L9 also. So the countries like now you are the Ruchi was sharing that which countries having the travel this. So this kind of the entire survey needs to be take place for the entire data centers. And this data center business, when the people are investing into that data center business, they are looking for the ROI, how they will get this security, whatever the security they are going to put, it is of money. End of the day, whatever we are going to invest, we have to get that money back within the certain limits of time. So whatever the amount of money they are spending on the security point, everybody likes to put the ROI calculations, and for that they are measure the whatever the major challenges nowadays we are facing, how the challenges will going to be increased. Like I forgot that lady's name. She was told about the environmental. So environmental also, how the it is going to affect the data center by flooding, lightning, or your environmental. If your global warming goes up, our heating is going to be up, your fuel is going to be down, the expenditure on that. So how we are going to secure everything into that data center as a box. So everybody was like to do that study in the beginning. So nowadays, whenever we are designing the data center, so at the time of designing the data center, previously we are doing only the site survey, location survey. But nowadays, everybody wants to ask for the security point of view, how we are going to secure our data, or the data center security part. They also involved in the RFP itself. So this is the major change, which is going to be driven by the artificial technological change. Nowadays, everybody wants that artificial technological intelligence, which required so many things. It's not like you have to be secure from one point or another point. They want 360-degree security, as well as they want the data or whatever their data center premises is there. It's hardly anybody can go inside, or any threat. They don't want whatever the RAM calculation, everything. They want nothing doing. We want zero tolerance. Like you people are come from the defense background, so you also know that what is zero tolerance. And when it comes to the data center, which is the industry now, there lots of people has to be worked. Data center development also goes like first one floor only get populated, then next floor has to be get populated. How the man movement has to be planned. There is a huge work needs to be done, and only for the security point of view. So this is my submission.
Yeah, I think great insights. I think the security is becoming a paramount importance when we talk about data centers, and we'll have to talk up more holistically rather than talking about only guns and guards. I think, and that brings me to I think it becomes poses a huge challenge. I'll come to Anand, Axis, for the ease of so that avoid confusion. So with these kind of needs which are changing overnight, and when we talk about a data center, there is a gestation period of 2 to 3, 4 years. So by the time we design it, or we conceptualize it and design it, and by the time we implement and operationalize it, almost 36, 48 months. And maybe the expectation of clients must have gone maybe as per the Moore's law, almost twice or double the kind of requirements. So how do, from a technology perspective, how do you keep that in mind, and how do you handle these kind of requirements?
A very interesting question, Mr. Pawan, and right, like you rightly pointed out, the Moore's law, right? Every once in 2 years, the technology processing capability goes higher, and the processing ability also has to evolve, right? So what it also means is from a surveillance perspective, I'll talk. I mean, without making it sound like a product presentation, right, or a marketing presentation, I'd like to highlight 1 or 2 things here. I would like to cite an example. I mean, a couple of years ago, the standards was, let's say, a 4-CIF resolution or a 1 megapixel resolution, right, when it comes to the camera surveillance being used. Today, we're talking about 2 megapixel to 4 megapixel as a standard, right? And we are seeing customers asking us 5 megapixel to 8 megapixel in the next couple of years, right? Like you rightly pointed out. So when you design a data center, where it impacts is you would have considered, or the customer would have considered a technology 2-3 years ago might have become an outdated technology today, right? And with that, and as we all know, as the resolution increases, the consumption of bandwidth and storage also increases exponentially. It has a bearing on the amount of storage that gets consumed, thereby impacting the larger sustainability question. And of course, there is a cost element involved as well. But as technology is evolving. There are technologies by industry leaders like Axis, which provides, which could assist in controlling this spiraling of bandwidth and storage, and features embedded into the solution that are provided to the customer to keep those costs in control, and thereby not impacting the overall cost and also not impacting the overall sustainability or consumption. Point one. Point two is one of the aspects that changing demands of customers are today that they think as the again, coming back to the Moore's law, right? The processing capabilities and powers which are enhanced every 2 years or 3 years, right? Today, the expectation from customers are a camera has to be doing not just surveillance, but can it do a more than just the surveillance, right? So where it is leading is AI or deep learning is a very strong word to use because it is still evolving, and a lot of learning and algorithm has to be trained. We all understand that. So I will restrict that terminology to analytics at the camera level itself. This is one trend or the evolving customer needs that we are seeing, where as the camera processors become more and more powerful, the metadata only needs to be transferred back and not the entire scene or video itself, right? So this is another evolving customer trend that we are seeing when it comes to the new age demands from the customers. And again, without sounding very arrogant about it, I would like to say that Axis, being a global leader in this forefront, being in this innovation of cameras for over 2.5 decades now, technology is becoming more and more affordable as economics of scale improve. And these are some of the technologies which are being more coming as a default feature on the cameras as well.
Sure. Great. I think excellent points. I think in terms of trends, I think very well summarized, Anand. Let me move to the end user perspective of it. Maybe move to Jyoti, and Jyoti, you have experience of working in various different setups. And I think I can say that not many people can brag about working in data centers for as long as in security, as long as you have worked. You may have worked for a few years, but I think it didn't exist a few years back. This kind of roles were not there at all in data center. So how have you seen the change happening, and what do you see the perspective? I'll say more because you work in one of the most, I think, what is it? Cross-border organization, I'll say, as a Microsoft. I think so many transfer of data with various countries and various things which happens. So how do you see various countries sittings in this thing, and as you say, the regulations, compliances, where do we stand, and how do you see the future of that?
Okay, so just to put this very in a very line, right? So data center, is a regulated company. It's not unlike the other companies. They work on the best practices or just in policy or a process. But when we look at the data centers, they are more regulated, audited, compliance is there. The practices are taken from data centers, but when we look at data centers, there are 3 or 4 parts to it. From physical security perspective, I'll just talk about physical security perspective. Like many of the companies, most of the organization focus on the software security and firewalls. However, a breach of physical security could cause the theft of data and devices that makes software security useless, right? So we need to focus on the access control, and it's very stringent process in data centers, right? So when we look at access control in different companies, it's just an access given to a person with a card, and the person goes in. But it does not happen in data center. It's like a dual authentication which happens, right? And it also has no work, no access. So if you have no work, you should not access the area, right? So So it's like that. And the third part is maker and checker. So for every single thing, there's a maker and checker, right? Like in other companies or any other industries, it's just, whatever we do, it's a process, and there is a standard, audits annually, maybe. But here it's not like that. So every day there are certain works which needs to be done, which needs to be authenticated, which needs to be checked, which needs to be, marked, which needs to be recorded. So why? Because as I said, it's very stringent. The processes are very stringent. We are regulated by a lot of laws, right? And not only. So if I'm sitting in India and I say that, I can view my camera because that's okay, because that's fine. Indian companies normally go and view what their employees are doing. But here in data center security, you can't do that because we're regulated with a lot of privacy, right? Privacy acts are there. So we need to be very careful, when it comes to, it's very stringent. So access control, CCTV surveillance, and, again, this cybersecurity, I will not more emphasize on cybersecurity, but yes, that will converge, in the coming days. But when we talk about physical security, this two main streamline is very, very important. And we are driven with, ensuring that nothing goes wrong here. So this is one part. Another is, as you spoken that, in other countries. So like example, I'll give you an example of, this case of Dallas police, department database leak. Now, what was, the reason actually it caused? It is employee negligence. But also, when we look at employee negligence, we also have to ensure that the security has to be proactive and not reactive. But in data center, it's mostly proactive. Flagging of some employees, or ensuring that intelligence, networking, and getting things aligned is very, very important. So this is how the data center security is right now. If we look at, yeah.
No, I think go ahead, please. Sorry.
Yeah. So if you look at, the other industries, I will not, debate and say that the airline industry is different, and, airline industry also even they have, but they have paramilitary, to support them. But when we look at data industry, data center industry, it is just physical security who, does. And, in the previous panel discussion, what was told that, only one person by Achilles sir, that, only one person managing, that's the real factor, that, only the one person is managing. But again, globally, it's different. So if you look at, in different countries, there could be, two people, but in India, we require at least 4 people. Because we are driven by, they are also driven by the policy, we are also driven by the policy, but our policies, our people, sorry to use that word, but our people will only listen when the incident happens or it occurs. So it is very difficult, in Indian industry, or and it has to be learned now with the kind of incidents happening across globe, right? So we need to merge ourselves to the, and we need to relate ourselves to the, incidents happening across, and how to ensure that, we follow the process, not only when, the incident occurs, but we have to be very proactive, when it comes to any kind of incidents. So that is how, globally, if we look at, we are very different, and we have to, if we look at, because it's growing, India is growing in the data center industry. And if we have to really go to that particular level, then we have to match our standards along with, what, the other regions are doing.
Absolutely. I think a great points. I think all the fascinating points. I think the nuances of the people do not understand what you do in data center. A lot of times that is asked that the same building, one building, this you need to protect. So I think it's a more proactive approach. So I'll just change sequence slightly and then get maybe Alok Jha in first because we are looking at the user perspective. Kind of thing, and then just start with an anecdotal thing. What I think Jyoti mentioned. I was talking to one of the CISOs of a few years back with one of the data centers. So I asked, what is your typical day looks like? He says, Pawan, I think most of the days it is audits. And whenever we have time in between, we do our normal work. So it is basically more about audits and doing work whenever you have time, or you have to create time for you. And that leads me to I think Colonel Alok Jha, because we can see the stature of I think the kind of seniority you bring into the table. And when the senior persons like you join the industry or a data center kind of an environment, that shows how the growth is happening in the industry. I think few years back, you could have unheard of a person of that seniority joining data centers. It was only about us. I remember when I used to do audit for data centers, almost 8-10 years, or maybe more than a decade back. It was basically a cybersecurity audit. In that, one of the domains was physical security, which only has 2 or 3 questions of physical security. That was the seriousness which was given to a physical security. And when we see a person of Shadow Colonel Alok Jha and Jyoti, with your experience coming in and joining data centers, that shows how the industry has evolved, and that should give a lot of, I think, a lot of confidence to youngsters who may be listening to this webinar to specialize in this domain, because I think future looks very bright, as we have seen. Maybe I'll come to your story, Alok sir. I think what maybe made you join this industry, and how are you, because you're very new to this kind of a thing, and what do you think are the nuances which you have incurred, and how it is different than maybe a very highly regulated banking industry kind of a thing, and what do you see the future of data center security maybe?
No, Pawan, thank you so much. And, at the outset, let me also thank the earlier panelists, Jyoti, Anand, and Vijay, to have brought out very important points in all the subjects they covered. Now, before I actually answer your question and go through my journey, what I'll generally do is maybe take a step back and then look at, maybe discuss the drivers, and also the way we are looking at the explosion of data centers in India, right? Like you said, maybe a decade earlier, it was hardly, very few data centers were there. And then to your point, when I joined the corporate from the government way back in 2011, I was in Airtel, and Airtel did have data centers that time. And like you very rightfully said, it was at a very low key in terms of physical security was concerned. Now, if we look at what is going to happen in India over the next 5 years, I think we are going to see capacity increase to about 3,800 to around 4,300 megawatts from the current capacity of roughly around 800 megawatts. We are also likely to see investments which are going to be up to the tune of 1 lakh to 1.5 lakh crores. And then a real estate of maybe over 7 million square feet. Today, the industry is valued at roughly over $4 billion. In 2027, experts say that it will be valued over 10 billion. So it's a huge increase, nearly an increase of roughly, I would say around 130% over the next 5 years, which is huge. Now, we also need to understand the drivers for this, right? There are drivers which are you can actually thank the government for it, but there are others as well which were beyond our control. So the favorable regulatory landscape, I would say, India being now more cognizant of data protection and sovereignty, the government push for digital economy initiative like Digital India Framework. Well, we had the draft data protection bill. Unfortunately, it's been withdrawn by the government because there were a lot of observations on the government control, and so that is going to come back. Then a very important piece was the classification of data centers industry as a critical infra by the government of India. Now that puts it in a different level altogether. Now to add to that was the permeation of internet, I would say smartphones into the rural areas, OTT platforms, education technology, gaming, digital India, you name it, and it is all there. And the government also actually going into a big way in terms of digitizing their services for transparency and efficiency, I would say. We have large scale hyperscalers like AWS, Google, Microsoft, Jyoti is there from Microsoft, IBM, Meta, which are outsourcing their storage needs to data centers. And with this, if I was to add, you have new technologies, IoT coming up, 5G getting rolled out in India, which will open up further demand for data centers. Now, having said that, people have realized, and Jyoti brought up that point that, generally it's a very regulated kind of a scenario where you work. Now I worked in the, also I worked in a investment bank. And like all of us know, investment bank is also very highly regulated. Now, most of the controls which we've seen from the physical security perspective in whichever industry you go are, either driven by regulatory norms. So if the regulators want you to do it, you will do it. Or it is driven by a mature organization. When they do their own threat vulnerability risk assessment, they come up with risk, they foresee this risk. These are mature organizations and they'll put in some controls. And third, which is very, very much more pertinent to us in the data center industry, is it is also driven by the customers. And why customers? Just to kind of draw an analogy, it's something like that. If you have jewels in your house, your wife, you have a lot of jewelry in your house, where do you go to put it up to be safe and secure? You go to a bank, right? Because you feel that in a bank, when I take a locker and I put it there, it is safe. At least safer than when it was, if I was keeping it in my house. Now, having said that, if I draw the same analogy here, data is oil. And data is money today, and everyone not only understands the importance of security of that data. Where do they put their data? Or the data, they come to a place where they're comfortable in terms of security. Now, unfortunately, what happens till say 4 years back, 5 years back, majority of the budgets in data center operations would go to cybersecurity. Now that is changing, definitely changing, and people would just feel physical security is okay, put a guard there, put an access control and he's standing there and that's it, physical security. Well, that's not physical security, right? There has to be, as we go by, convergence between cyber. We've spoken of so much of things, cyber, logical, and physical security has to converge. Unfortunately, what happens is all of us are very, very domain specific. We do not want to lose our own home ground, I would say, if that was the right word to use. And we don't want to interact, and we don't want to, kind of converge. And that is the reason why, many companies, you'll see, you still have different verticals as far as security is concerned. You have logical security, cyber security different, and you'll have physical security different. But going forward, the way I look at it is, organizations which can understand the benefits of this convergence will definitely be better placed in terms of selling their spaces in data centers also to any client, because the clients do understand. Most of the clients are all technical and technology clients, so they do understand the convergence of both logical, cyber, and physical in terms of giving an holistic integrated security framework to their data which is residing on a server, or the network which is residing in the data center. So I think it's interesting times, and it's better that all of us learn, and we don't purely look at physical guarding from, like you said, guns and boots on ground. It is going to be much beyond that. Other important thing about security, I would say, would be, we need to be scalable. I'm now purely talking of physical security. I know these words are used more from the cyber, from the IT perspective, but even from the physical security perspective, we need to be scalable, we need to be agile, and we need to be proactive. And for all those three things, it actually hems into the three important aspects for data center operation, that is uptime, availability, and least downtime and reliability. If we do our part from the physical security domain of being able to be scalable, agile, and proactive, and all these things can only happen if we actually inculcate technology and are ready to embrace technology. Where generally I found that, being a hardcore physical security exponent, we are slightly averse to adopting these very important facets. And if we do it better and faster, I think we'll not be out of.
So you got muted. Kalja, you are muted.
Yeah,
Sir,
you are muted, sir.
Yeah. I think somebody took a proactive approach on you, I think.
So that's all I have to say.
Great, sir. No, actually fascinating. I think the fascinating summary and the journey which you have mentioned, I think.
Sorry, I muted. Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir. We can hear you. We go. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much for the. I think I like the scalability. I think. Let me move on to, I think, Anand. I think what the best I think handover you can get is what the scalability, agility, and proactiveness, which I think you must be emphasizing on in your talk. Before that, I think one anecdotal thing which I'd like to add. So I have stopped using this Data Protection Act in my most of the webinars and seminars because I've been talking about it for last 2 years and I have lost my credibility every time I say when it is coming. So I think more than government, I think I will have to stop using this. I don't know when it is coming and is it really coming or not on that thing. On that thing, I think let's go to Anand. All the words which Alok said must be, I think, music to your ears. Let's hear the views of Genetec on this perspective, and if you can also throw light upon the convergence side, which he mentioned about, because a lot of money was going into cyber, and now I know Genetec is making a lot of money because a lot of dollars are coming to Genetec from various data centers and other industry. How do you see the future? How do you see the convergence? The talk about scalability, agility, and proactiveness, how that thing works out. Anand, all yours.
Thanks a lot, Pawan sir. Being the last speaker, many of the topics
your second last, so don't worry about
there you go. I still have one more speaker to pass the baton on. Thanks a lot. It's a pleasure being with this panel, especially Jyoti, Alok sir, Anand, Vijay, the kind of insights thrown. I'll pick up from the previous panel, right? The keynote speaker made a very, very important challenge to Mitesh, saying that data is no new oil. I think I have been emphasizing data is the new powerhouse. I agree, data might not be the new oil, but data is the new powerhouse, and with great powers comes great responsibility. And Jyoti rightly pointed out that it's a very, very regulated market. And Alok sir rightly mentioned that there are two spectrum of data center operators, what we see today in the industry. One is very, very matured hyperscalers coming in from global, and they try to bring in a little more pressure on us in this part of the world to step up our overall compliances and the regulations and the overall physical security standards, what we need to do it. And then what Alok sir rightly mentioned, from a physical security standpoint, there is a lot of thought process which is coming in, and you re-emphasize the 3 lines of physical security today versus as a vendor, we address a lot of InfoSec and cyber security checklist, which goes pages and pages, and it's a very, very complicated world out there, which is really a good challenge. If I take a step back, and what we see happening in the industry is in the last 3 years, traditionally when we used to speak to a data center operator, the physical security ends with a bunch of NVRs and maybe a entrance automation with a simple access control. And now what we see is that it's no more an NVR related conversation, but more of convergence of physical security technologies. And some of the prominent ones, again, the keynote speaker outlined in the morning was the video access control. And let's extend that the conversations are now around key cabinet management, perimeter intrusion, and some advanced hyperscale data centers are talking about how do I protect from drones. This is the level of conversations which has matured, which is really, really good for this industry. And traditionally, if you look at most of these systems were operating in silos, and now we clearly see a shift where the data center operators, either due to the regulatory requirements or due to the compliance requirements or due to the operational efficiency requirements, expect all of these technologies to work together in a very, very cohesive format. We traditionally, even now, if you go to many of the data centers, I'm sure it is operating in silos. But all the greenfield projects have either set their journey towards this unified approach of bringing all the systems together and working in a very, very cohesive format. And then brownfield projects have been put across in that roadmap to get into that path. That is the first key transformation we are seeing. The second key transformation we are seeing is on the automation side of it. Like traditionally, if you look at, let's take the video and access control, simple use cases like a person coming in with a key card, did something for the rack, exited out without placing the key. So there is a convergence of the key cabinet management solutions coming over here from an automation standpoint that, yes, Anand came into my data center, he did certain maintenance, but can he exit without placing the key back into the key cabinet? No. So that's the kind of level of automation. And there, if you look at it, that's where the convergence of systems and the cohesively working between the systems is becoming very, very important, especially those customers who are emphasizing on the operational efficiency part of it. Now, talking to the cyber side of it, I think you look at today morning, I was reading a Business Standard article, which is published by IETE. Can you believe it or not? All the panelists gave an example of Target, Google's, something happening in the US, but in this part of the world, in the last 9 months, 51 million cyber attacks have been happened specifically on the data center vertical itself. Look at the Aditya Birla Group, what happened recently. Look at the recent example of Power Grid, which happened. So let's not look at somewhere else. It's happening in our door, in our cities. So cyber is real. And now when it comes to the convergence in data center world, we are still scratching the surface. There's a lot of work to do in this part of the world. How does the cyber and physical security converge? The single sign-on solutions, how does it evolve? And it all goes back to the core problem of breaking that silo. So if you have siloed systems and you want all of them to talk together between cyber and logical, I think that's where the transformation is happening. And last but not the least, some of our advanced matured customers in data center industry look at utilizing some of the cybersecurity certification. For example, Genetec has been investing in cybersecurity certification like UL 2900 level 3, which is very focused on physical security assets. SOC 2 type 2, which is very, very focused on data protection, the GDPR compliance within the data protection. So these are all becoming a sort of unique value proposition for those data center operators to sell to their customer that we are not talking from a compliance perspective, but the partners whom we are choosing are also responsible enough to take care of that cyber compliances. So those are all certain insights which I can share with the panel, and I hope it's useful. Yeah, over to you.
I think fascinating insights, Anand. I think yes, convergence, the key transformations which you talk about are really going to help going in future. And of course, yes, it is a highly regulated and certification will become a norm if you want to even get business. I think we'll have to go through that multiple certifications and audits are not getting reduced. Jyoti and Alok sir, I think they are going to increase as we go ahead. Yes, that brings me to Dhananjay. I think last but not the least, Dhananjay, you have huge experience in consulting or maybe designing of data centers across geographies, which is there. Maybe I'd like to hear from your side of what has been your experience, because data center security was not taken seriously a few years back, but now I think every data center, the security is playing, every client or end client, or at least the operators are demanding that there has to be an independent consultant. Not a part of MEP, it has to be a separate security specialist or a consultant, and things which we hear about specialized security, maybe expertise like blast impact assessments and blast analysis and all those, which were not spoken about earlier. What maybe your views on that, Dhananjay?
So yeah, that is happening, and that is real actually. Like earlier panelists have said, actually, but the operator, let me bring some other aspect to this actually. Let me be a representative of an operator who is establishing a data center. So he actually is sort of having, he's become a sort of sword having two edges. The one edge of the certifications, because he has to maintain in certifications, to have this regulated market, to get into the market and kind of all those, and he is to follow that. So there are three bodies essentially. If you see largely, one is your uptime, second one is your NCTI 942, or you may be having the European EN 50600 actually. Okay, now you will have to choose either of them. It's based on geography, based on the clientele you are into actually. Okay, and what sales kind of environment you are into. Except uptime, both these American and European standards speaks about the security in very depth. And they say that you will have to comply as an operator certain security norms, and that goes without saying. Without that, you will not be getting the certification. Uptime, though be a private body, the other guys are actually, you can say, a national national standards actually, okay, or national frameworks. They don't speak about what you need to put, but they gives a general overview of this should be there kind of thing. That's one part of thing. Second is when he goes to market, actually, client has its own this thing requirement also. So client say, okay, fine. So as per standard, you have built up your perimeter, you have built up your entry exits, you have built up your access control management and etc. Now tell me what about my the data halls? Yeah, how are you securing my data halls, and what security measures you have put in? How many layers, like Vijay said, whether it is 7 layer, 9 layer, and n number of layers, and kind of all that actually. So you tell me where exactly it is, and it's like for him, he is like getting a prospect or getting a brochure and going in market actually. He'll have to justify that. And like one of the panelists mentioned, actually, client really means the tenants who want to take the space, they are really keen to know what are the feasibility studies undertaken, what are the security status, has it been certified by some consultant who are of a global repute, and kind of all those actually. So he is into tremendous pressure, and that's why this regulated work comes usually actually, because you will have to maintain that. Otherwise, either you will be losing your certification or you are out of market, actually will not get tenants. Simple. So both sides you will have to have that maintained. So that is one story of an operator who needs to maintain everything. Now, when it comes to the narrowed down approach to the entire security as a posture or a perspective, actually, it's not only starts from how strong your physical security. It starts with whether you have blast impact analysis done. So most of the people say, okay, you need to have a blast impact analysis, or you need to be under certain zone. You need to follow certain types of cameras, and the resolutions needs to be so and so. The retention period of frame should be so and so. The access management should be so and so. They may not be going in deep and writing all those things actually, but they are clearly specifying that you will have to follow 90 days recording and kind of all that. So those things are very much stipulated actually. So security as a wholesome, you can say it's taken a 4 seat actually, and like you mentioned, actually earlier it was not. But then the way the entire globe is transforming into online kind of thing actually, and the cloud migration, and like earlier we used to talk about, and nowadays we started writing about, is like whether on premises storage is good or on cloud storage is good kind of thing, and we start writing the white papers around it and kind of all that, and you will find the majorities goes with, oh, okay, why should I maintain everything actually? Let's have everything on cloud, and it would be 24/7 availability, and everything is in the operator's domain. I need not to maintain it, and in that kind of thing. The people like Genetec and all that, actually now they have the global visas kind of platform actually. Means they now people ask, oh, okay, do you have visas? Then only I will come. Correct me, Anand, if I am not this thing. So it's like that actually. People started asking that. So what does all this means actually? That we are transforming from earlier traditional way to the global way, to a cloud way or internet way actually. And that essentially means what Alok sir has given those statistics and all that actually. And that's how these statistics would build. So this is all correlated in an ecosystem kind of thing actually. So security is not going anywhere unless somebody taking security seriously. I think there would not be place to him actually. Like I mentioned, actually, either you will not get certification or you are out of market because tenants will not choose you as a operator or as a host, and that's it. That's how it is actually.
Sure. Well, I think
that's my view.
Great. Thank you very much, Dhananjay. I think we could hear about from all the speakers for on and on, but I think we have come to what the stipulated time we had. I'll just request Anand from Axis to switch on the camera. We can take one picture and one maybe a big applause to all the panel members. a big thank you to everyone for the great insights which you have given. I'm very sure all the 6 panel members, I can divide into 2 buckets of 2 each, that the consultants like Vijay and Dhananjay, there is no shortage of business which we are going to get in. Genetec and I think Axis, I think you are going to make millions of dollars on this thing. And I think Alok sir and Jyoti, I think you don't have to worry about your increments in future. So that I can summarize how the data center is going to look like in future on that thing. With that, I'll like to hand it over back to Mitesh, and a big thank you and a big applause to all the panelists for such a wonderful insights. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Pawan. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Pawan.
Again,
Thank you.
yeah. Thank you, Pawan sir, for hosting the panel 2 in a very fantastic way. I think you summarized it right way. We have our job secured for the next decade for sure, because the industry is booming. It has been a fascinating 2-hour+ session that we have been attending. We still have about 180 people joined with us. What I would love to do is first give an entire summary of what we have done by quoting some high-level points from all the speakers and panelists today we had. But before I do that, I would like to thank each one of you for attending this session. It has been lovely so far, and I hope you had great takeaways to go back and implement in your own life and journey. I would also like to thank Axis as well as Genetec for being our partners. We are privileged to have you, and we really appreciate this association and collaboration. So on that note, let me just do a quick summary. If I can do, I have about 5 minutes, and I'll try to do my best. We started this session with Lieutenant General Sudhir Sharma's comments on data centers. And data, he said, data is the heart in any organization or any growing economy. And it is going to be the driving force in the new world. It is going to just go on. The data explosion is uncontrollable in a way. However, there are going to be threats, both physical and cyber, that are going to demand organizations and economies to be smart enough to know how do they counterplay them. Also define that geopolitical threats will also define the security practices which organizations do, because localization, data localization is a reality, not just for economies like India, but for many other economies. Then we had a keynote speaker, Akhilesh Tuteja. He had a very different view. He did not believe in data in the new oil, but he felt like data, you cannot fall for, any organization cannot have a standard playbook to handle physical or cyber security practices. He also believed that data center will be fully autonomous in the near future with only a man and a dog manning it. He believed that storing data is less expensive, but overall data management and retrieval is where the cost lies, and hence organizations need to be smart enough of how do they protect it. He also said that data security and data management technology should go hand in hand. It cannot be one segment taking control of another. He also highlighted that senior leadership should take ownership when it comes to data center security, because he believes that the UX UI take all the importance, and data which is in the background sometimes are not given due importance. Then we had a panel 1 moderated by Lieutenant Colonel Sushil Pradhan. We started with Sandeep Bandega sir. He highlighted that data center market is a very tough market. It is with new players coming in, both global and local. It is turning from a seller's market to a buyer's market. He still believes land, power, and telco remain key challenges. However, power and telco challenges are getting resolved as time improves. Government are more supportive of initiatives coming up. He believed that global best practices to data centers are bought by the global players, and local best practice are bought by the local players, which enables organizations to have a better overview of how should they manage data centers. Then we had Anbu. Anbu highlighted how the security framework had evolved, and he explained earlier we had only 2 layers, now to 7 to 9 layers, and the layers of physical security are only growing. He highlighted importance in investing in security technologies, not just security technologies, but also on trainings, and highlighted the importance of doing regular surveys and creating frameworks so that data center security remains agile. And we had Vivek. Vivek highlighted the 2 aspects about where APAC we are. He highlighted how we have grown from, we are beating EMEA by almost 10 billion plus, and we are just next to the Americas market. He also highlighted that in the current future, we see Singapore, Hong Kong, Sydney being key market, but in the APAC region, but also remain positive that we'll have one city from India under the top 10 data center thing. He also highlighted that there should be focus on sustainability right from the start, and designing green should be the motive for any organizations building new data centers. Compliance will be a big driver, and adhering to global practices will become a new norm for all data centers. Then we had Shaili. Shaili highlighted about the differences between sustainability, ESG as well. Sustainability is only just the good to know things that you can implement. It's good to have kind of thing. ESG is the systematic risk assessment approach where she highlighted. Water and energy will become the two key areas where we need to focus at data center, because it's a reality actually that water maybe in the next 10 years we'll have shortages in major cities where data centers are there, and hence an alternative is imperative for organizations. Then we had Vijay. Then we had the MitKat PRI presentation by Ruchi, which highlighted why it is important to have a third party like MitKat provisioning PRI services, risk intelligence services, so that you are aware of what are the incidents that are happening in and around you, so you are proactively managing. Then we moved to panel 2. Panel 2, we had a power pack panel moderated by Pawan sir. We had initiated, the first panelist was Vijay. Vijay highlighted the importance of having advanced technologies in securing all our data center assets. He also said that the layered security approach from L1, L2 has gone to L0 to L7, and it is always increasing. He focused on having a holistic approach of securing all the data centers, so we manage it much more better. Then we had Anand from Axis. He highlighted that processing capabilities have evolved. He highlighted how a few years back a 1 megapixel was okay, but now it is moving to 2 and more, which means the expectations from clients have increased, and hence the technological controls play a pivotal role in having that. He also highlighted that counter to the new norm, that technology has actually assisted organizations, and it has become much more affordable for organizations to secure their assets. With that, he highlighted few scenarios, how Axis is supporting organizations in securing their the entire physical security of the data center approach. Then we had Jyoti. Jyoti talked about the regulated technical control environment that we had. She spoke right from the different aspect of physical security and why access control in any other organization versus in a data center is completely different. I'll remember this line, ma'am. No work, no access. I'll remember it for a long time. I always used to say, and as a joke, that you will find more doors in a data center than people at any given point of time. She also highlighted the importance of maker-checker mechanism at every point of in every point during the entire data center journey. Then we had Alok sir. Alok sir was very positive about his approach about there are more investments coming into data center in India, and we are looking forward for a very positive golden time in terms of data center, especially in India. He highlighted the drivers of growth. It would be right from the government to the customer expectation, customer requirements to favorable market conditions. He focused on convergence of both cyber and physical security, and that is going to better place organizations, better place data center companies. He focused on uptime, availability, reliability, scalability, agility, and proactiveness as a whole to better manage security in data centers. Then we had Anand from Genetec. I think Anand is a fan of Spider-Man because he believes in that line. Okay, I love the way he said that data is a new powerhouse. Definitely, it is a new powerhouse. And I also love the way he said that there is maturity within organizations of how they are pursuing physical security. It is not about just taking in silos, but it is more and more organizations are talking about having different aspects, cohesing it, and converging different aspects of physical and cyber security to give a holistic solution to clients. Then finally, we had Dhananjay. Dhananjay focused on operations or operators are faced with double-edged sword, where once they have to focus on standards and certifications, but at the same time they want to also have real life scenarios or real life controls to be placed internal to the organization so that data is protected in the well. He's also positive of the opinion that traditional frameworks are now transforming. Newer organizations which are starting, which are building data center from scratch, they are having security as an inbuilt component, which is helping them having better throughput. With that, we come to an end of our session. I tried my best to summarize the entire thing in whatever I could note it down. I could remember my college days where I have to write the last 2 pages in 2 minutes. It felt like that. But great session. I must admit that I have learned personally a lot of things. Learned different perspectives, both from a vendor side, also from client side, also from partner side. So we strongly believe that in the future, data center security will remain imperative, and it is going to be a continuous journey. It is not going to be only technical controls or physical controls. It is going to be learning or training at a personal level or a people level that is also going to play a role of how to manage the entire security. We would love to thank all our participants. We would also like to highlight that MitKat is organizing a data center security masterclass on 25th of September and a command center masterclass on 26th of September. We would encourage each one of you to enhance your knowledge and skill set by attending such kind of courses. Please reach out to us and we'll be happy to give you more details about the courses.